talk about getting parameter data out of your Creo models to Excel. And this is actually a pretty powerful function. It has some nice features in it for filtering content and writing it. This is specific to data sheets. Now, a data sheet in Nitro-CELL is a special type of sheet that you can use to do mass sends of information back. So the thought process behind this is that this data will be in a specific format that will identify the model, the parameter that you're going to be modifying, and the value you're going to send, and you could send a whole stack of stuff at once from a data sheet versus doing it one command at a time. Now, that being said, this is an older function, so there is a new option for this that we think is a little bit more sophisticated using tables, but we'll talk about this first. So what we're going to do is do a get append, and we're going to look for the parameter get append function. And by default, it's going to take the active model. And this will need to write to a target data sheet, which we just created called my params. And then there's a couple of other options here. Like, what do you want to get? The default is everything that's in there. And then you could also filter by value too. So I'm just going to run this as it is. And you'll notice that for the speaker assembly, these are the parameters that are in that particular model. If we take a look here, we can see that in fact those are the same things that obviously are there. So now this just reports where it came from, the parameter name, and the value. It doesn't tell us anything about like whether something's designated or not. And also by default they're excluded, meaning if we run this or try to send this data back in some way, these aren't going to make any changes because they're all excluded. So you'd have to go in and uncheck these or get rid of these values just by hitting the delete key to enable this to be able to send back. And of course, that's a totally separate function. So the other nice thing about this is that you can do things like, let's do a clear. I think we have a clear data sheet in here somewhere. Yeah, clear data sheet. So I'm going to put as just part of this little automation here, we're going to clear that out. And then I'm going to come in and say, I really want basket.prt. So what that does is that first line is going to clear it out. So we're missing our speaker assembly stuff, and now we've got our basket information. Now, the cool thing about this is that you can actually kind of put in other things here. So let's say we had some specific models we wanted things for. So let's say screw and spider.prt. And if we run this, obviously this automation is clearing the sheet, and then it's going and hitting each of those models and appending their data here. So this is pretty handy. And we can also, just for giggles, let me show you a couple of things. So if you wanted to limit this to like DESC, like anything that started with DESC, like description, and run that, you'll notice here that our data is significantly less because we're only pulling back those particular parameters. And you could also filter this with values also. So if we said, anything that has DH in it, for example, we'll just hit all this, any parameter and any value that has DH in it. And you'll notice here that engineered by is the only thing that matches those. So it is a very, very powerful function. Now I'm going to kind of guide you a different way now. There is a table parameter get function, and this actually does something very similar. It does the active model. Of course, you can wildcard models you want to process, just like you can up here. We didn't really talk about that, but you can wildcard models also. Parameter name you're interested in, the value you're interested in, which is very similar to here, and then what table do you want to write this to. So instead of writing things to a data sheet and then trying to go in and modify that with Excel formulas, you can actually write it to an Excel table with the table option. And then you could use Power Query to perform all your manipulations on your parameter data and send that data back using table references also. So this is by far the better function to use, but this other function, it's more of a legacy thing, but it's still available and still